This essay is called How to Make the Right Decisions, Even When Everyone Disagrees. At the beginning of my final year in university, I decided I no longer wanted to continue with my studies. It was the final year of my psychology-biology double major program when I was hit with the realization that my growing lack of understanding in biology, combined with the way the senior year was structured, was probably going to lead me to fail, which meant kissing my bachelor's degree goodbye. My interest in psychology was so great that I was managing to get good grades without putting in much effort into studying. But in biology, even after hours of cramming and hair pulling, I barely passed the second year. With the growing complexity of the studies in the third year, I knew that it was time to admit defeat and leave the program of my own will instead of waiting to be kicked out. I was incredibly ashamed of this. Up until that point, I had never failed to complete my studies. I have never failed to complete anything. I was a good student who received high grades. Barely surviving in a program was a complete shock to me, and thinking about quitting was a new, scary idea that went against my identity. I was raised with the notion that if you start something, you finish it. You tough it out, no matter how hard it is. Otherwise, you are considered a failure, and being a failure was not tolerated. But together with the shame that filled me, whenever I contemplated the idea of quitting biology, I was filled with a sense of relief that I couldn't ignore. "But you have one more year to go," a friend exclaimed when I told her about my decision. "Just get your degree and then study for another bachelor's. Are you sure you want to do this? You will be throwing away 2 years of study," another friend said. While I got their points, by the time I announced it to my peers, I had already called the university's advising office to inquire about programs that I could apply to, and started the process of switching from biology to management. Despite the many opinions I continued to receive about this decision and the discomfort in facing them, I knew it was the right thing for me to do. I just felt it. Eventually, the shame passed, and 3 years later, I got my bachelor's degree. When I graduated from university, I decided that it was time to fulfill my lifelong dream of leaving my home country. I knew that my parents, whom I have a turbulent relationship with, would try to stop me, so I didn't let them in fully on my intentions. I simply declared that I was going to travel around Europe for a couple of months, to which my dad's response was, "Why do you need to be away for such a long time? Just start with 2 weeks and see how you feel, and then you can go on a longer trip if you'd like. This is the plan for now. I'll get there and then see how I feel," I said, humoring him, knowing that I was not going to buy a return ticket anytime soon. "It's not safe for you to travel on your own," my mother jumped in. "Take someone with you. What about your friend Jane?" she suggested. "I don't need someone protecting me," I said, rolling my eyes at the idea that Jane could simply drop everything and come with me on a trip that was scheduled to happen in a couple of days. "And you will be able to manage on your own?" she asked, eyebrows raised, a hint of a smirk in the corner of her mouth. The idea that a woman would be able to travel by herself, was foreign to my mother. She only traveled with dad or joined a trip arranged by her work. All she ever had to do was simply show up and do as she was told. She couldn't imagine navigating travel or life by herself. "Yes, I can," I said through my teeth, my jaw tense. "You just graduated university. You should be looking for a job, not traveling. You need to start thinking about your future," Dad said. "I am thinking about my future. My future doesn't include living here," I thought to myself. "It'll be fine," I said to him, and with that meaningless statement, the conversation was over. 1 week later, I hugged Dad goodbye and got on a plane heading to Europe with no plans of ever returning. These 2 decisions were the biggest I made at the time. One of them was made with shame and defeat hovering over it. The other was made through a knowing that was deep within me. Both of them felt right at the time. And in regards to both of them, people were quick to tell me their opinions, give me suggestions, and try to influence my decision. Now, to be frank, I do believe that in both cases, people were telling me what they thought was best. But, and here's the thing to remember, this best wasn't what was best for me, but what would be best for them if they were in a similar situation. The majority of people, when faced with a situation, can't help but project their own view and stories onto it. When my friends were telling me that I was making a mistake, they were actually speaking to themselves, influenced by how they viewed the situation if our roles were reversed. They couldn't possibly know what was a mistake in my life or what was a good decision for me because neither of us could predict the future. Neither of us could know how my decisions would impact my life. Throwing 2 years of study away, that's just one perspective on it. I enjoyed those 2 years of study, and I learned a lot during them. The way I saw it, muscling through a year of study that I knew I was going to fail, just for the sake of finishing what I started, was in itself going to lead to time wasted. When it came to my parents, most of their persuasion efforts were influenced by fear. Fear of what people from our community would think of me, a woman, traveling by herself, and how they thought that would impact my chances of appealing to a potential husband. Fear of something happening to me because the world is a dangerous place. Fear that I would not come back. Granted, that was a justified fear because I hadn't, but regardless, these, among the rest of their fears, had nothing to do with me, my life, and my happiness, and everything to do with my parents. Now, it's important for me to say here that this is not said for the purpose of deeming people good or bad. It's just for the purpose of being aware of how people think in order to stay mindful that when it comes to your life, people can never tell you what the best course of action would be because it will always be influenced by how they view life, their values, and their fears. If you want to start a business, are deciding between two different career paths, or are wondering which city to move to, it would be wise to seek advice from people who started a business, are working in the careers you're deciding between, and live in the cities that you are considering moving to, because they can give you information that you cannot know by yourself. But receiving information and facts is one thing, and asking what the best course of action for you is another. When it comes to the latter question, the best decisions for your life, your peace of mind, your happiness, no one can answer that for you. Only you can answer that. I believe that the road to you finding these answers begins with you knowing what it feels like when you're making a decision out of pure pull towards something, even when this pull is not logical. When you ask people about the best decision to make, they will spill their logic all over it. And that logic, because it's often fear-based, will persuade you if you let it. But I've come to learn that the best decisions I've made in my life never came from logic, but from following a feeling, what I often call my truth. This feeling of warmth, of ease, is exactly what I felt when I decided to switch my major, regardless of how hard that was for me, because I knew that it would allow me to get my bachelor's degree. This feeling is also the one that drove me to leave my home country, regardless of all that entailed. Looking back at all the decisions I made in my life, I see that every single time I made a decision out of fear, or someone else's fear, it made my life harder and less enjoyable. Now, to be frank, when I first started following my truth, it also didn't make my life easier right away, because going against logic, against the norm, I often found myself plagued by questions from both people and myself about whether I made the right decision, and it's not easy living with these thoughts. But as long as I stuck to my truth, these questions eventually passed, and I'd come to see that the decisions that I made following my inner knowing always, and I mean always, led me to peace of mind and a sense of freedom in the long run. Living that way, my decisions might not make sense to most people, but my life doesn't need to make sense to people. It has to feel right to me. No one can teach you how to feel your way into what's best for you. You must experience that for yourself. You must learn what it feels like in your body when you are making a decision based on fear, and what it feels like when you are making a decision for the sake of freedom and ease. For that, you must be willing to face the wrong decisions every once in a while, and learn how to not let that stop you from continuing to make further decisions. You must be willing to face people not approving of your choices and judging you, because in a culture where people are obsessed with making the right decisions according to everyone else, you will be one of the few asking, am I making the right decisions for me? Thank you for sharing your time with me, and I hope that today you will make a decision that is right for you. If you would like to read this essay, you can find it on my Substack. You can find the link in the description. And if you are currently facing a tough decision where you would like someone partial to talk to, feel free to book a call with me. The link is also in the description. Thank you again for watching, and I will see you soon. Bye.